your
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Let me
Yeah.
record. Let me see, guys.
Well, thanks, Coach, for doing this. I really appreciate you sending me that link
Oh yeah,
to that movie, because I got a chance to go through a whole season. I mean, obviously it's clipped up and stuff, but
yeah.
I'm here with Coach Tony Bentley from Wakefield, and the movie I'm talking about is Remember the Warriors, and it's about Coach Bentley's third team at Wakefield in 2005 when they had an undefeated team and they went all the way to the state semifinals. I'm not, spoiler alert, I'm not going to tell you what happened in the state semifinals, but it's interesting because I saw all those games, but I have no memory of that. I remember all the games 40 years ago, but my short term is suffering.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Grant Hill had mentioned to me that Tony is in everything. I think he thought you were in some of my podcasts, other stuff. But you have your own great podcast, you and your buddy Buck, Buck.
Yeah.
And you had this movie, so you actually have gotten a lot of media exposure, which is awesome. Yeah,
it's fun. I mean, it's funny. I saw that Daryl Brandt sent me a clip of what Grant had said in the clip, so maybe watch the show. But Grant's right. I mean, Grant and I go back to the high school days when we played against each other in those battles. Well, I won't call them battles because I wasn't a part of that game when he scored the last 16 points against WNL.
Wow.
To win the district championship. I was a sophomore. It was his sophomore year as well, but I was on JV. I was just lucky to get a seat in the place because it was an amazing night and for him to do what he did. But we, stayed in contact through Wendell Byrd and working camps. And we'll get into that later, but was able to go and work some camps for Grant and things like that. So it's pretty good to be doing some of the things I've done.
Yeah. So I look forward to talking about Grant. One thing I wanted to ask you is, after watching that movie, one theme that comes across in the movie is a perceived lack of respect. I mean, I get the feeling that Wakefield feels like they don't get respect, and this is early in your coaching career.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was 16 years ago. A lot of coaches coach that way. Like Gary Hall is very much us against the world. No one believes in us. That was John Thompson's whole thing. When I felt that way when I watched the movie. Do you feel that way as a coach now? Like maybe Wakefield or even you as a coach don't get the respect you deserve, or is that a way of motivating your players, or that was maybe a phase that you went through at the time?
Yeah, I think, like I said, even in the movie, you have to really be here at Wakefield to understand what I was talking about at that time. And I grew up in this neighborhood, and I didn't have the opportunity to go to Wakefield, but I was that kid who went to all of the Wakefield games. I lived 1.5 miles from Wakefield. And so that's Friday nights, the football games, the basketball games was what you did in Wakefield. The community was bigger than the students, So of course I didn't play here, but I knew all about Wakefield. And so when you get here, I talked about it in the movie, we were having this great run and undefeated, and the kids still just wasn't getting their respect. And I guess it was because I was a young coach. I wasn't proven, and that's fine. And that's what it took on that era of, Coach Veldran, Bob McCool, the guys who have been around forever. And then all of a sudden these new guys start popping up. Tony Bentley, Doug Ewell, guys who start popping up and then all of a sudden have some success. We weren't getting the respect that was. So yes, I used that to my kids, and it played that, we were not getting the respect, and we just went out and played basketball. We didn't care. Like if you saw in the movie, I said, this is not our fifth time, Wakefield's fifth time or sixth time getting to the regionals. It was our first time doing it. So I wanted to make sure that the kids understood that we have a big history here at Wakefield, but at the same time to continue that history, we had to do what we had to do that season to be, marked in history. So yeah, the respect that Wakefield didn't get at that time, and I think we may get a little respect. I think too much respect now, because teams are coming after us, man, and it's not the same when you beat a Wakefield team now. It's not the same as beating that Wakefield 05 team, you know what I mean? So it was part of our strategy of saying we didn't get the respect, and me and Coach Willis have been together forever, using it for us, saying that, we're not going to get respect until we win. So we had to.
Well, sometimes it can be difficult seeing yourself on video. Like I saw myself interviewed like 25 years ago about officiating, and it's weird. Now that you didn't even know, I mean, you were a great coach back then, but you probably didn't know half what you know now.
No.
Do you ever watch that and look back on some of the things that you did? And the funny thing is, a lot of times history is made by the first timers. So a lot of times people who do things the first time, they're the ones that win. But when you look back, you look back on things you did, and you're like, I didn't even know what I was doing back then.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is when I went back, because I hadn't watched the video, it's hard to watch the video down the stretch. And then also those memories that we created with those guys and things. So it's still to this day, 16 years or whatever it is, it's hard to watch that video because I find myself right there in the locker room with the guys. I look at each guy and I know each one of their stories and the struggles that they went through that season. So it's kind of hard, and then looking back on it, seeing me with, no gray hair, so things like that, and just the way, but I watched it the other night and I don't think I do much different as far as like coaching. Like I saw myself in that timeout, and I saw when we went on a run and I jumped on the court and I'm still high-fiving, and, I still do that, 20 years later. So there's things that I've done differently off the court to prepare and things like that, because we didn't have, like Doug talked about his interview, there wasn't huddle. And there wasn't things that we have that makes things easier for us now, that you have to adapt and change. And I know one of the questions you had for me was, what did I do differently when I got to Wakefield? Was I kind of knew, what Wakefield was maybe missing a little bit. My best friend, Kenya Hunter, went to Wakefield. I played against Wakefield, and I knew as time was getting closer before I got the job, what those kids could possibly need. And I remember when I first got the job, one of the first things I did, I went and put a PlayStation in my office. And, PlayStation was big. It might have been PlayStation 2. I don't even know what it was back then, but put that in my office. And I had all the kids come in my office and they were playing games. And as we were playing video games, I was able to talk to the kids about their family life and things like that. And just to let them know that I was going to be there for those guys, and not just a seasonal type of thing, but was going to be there for those guys. So there's all kinds of things you have to do, and each generation changes. That was perfect for when I first got a job at Wakefield, was put that PlayStation in my office and get those kids coming in and playing video games and talking to them and finding out what their goals were and what they wanted to do.
Well, there's a great interview with your athletic director. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name now.
Noelle Deskins, Miss Deskins.
Miss Deskins. And one thing you said right away, that I'm gonna win the state title. Yeah. Is there is it possible to win too early? Like, for example, your third year, you already go 27-0 before you lose, and you could always get a state final. Is there a sense that maybe that happened a little too early for you, or was it good it happened there because it gives you credibility the rest of your career? That is really early success.
Yeah, I think with the longevity, I can look back on it and speak on it. Because as a 30-year-old coach, I put my time in though. So I wasn't a coach who lucked up and got the Wakefield job. I started coaching in 1991 at WNL as a varsity assistant first under John Phillips. And from there, the second year, he made me the head freshman coach. So I coached 2 years of head freshman coach at WNL. Then from there, Bobby Dobson came on. Bobby Dobson kept me on and made me the JV coach. So I did JV for 6 or 7 years at WNL before I even thought about coaching a varsity team. So I put my time in. So I had some success at WNL, and I felt like it was time, but I always wanted to be the head coach at Washington Lee. Who doesn't play at their high school and think to come back and be the head coach at their alma mater? I definitely wanted to be, but Bobby and I are close in age. And if I sat around and waited for Bobby Dobson to leave WNL, I'll still be waiting right now, because Bobby is still at WNL doing his thing. And so, with his blessings, he was definitely saying it is time for you to look and see. And Lord and behold, the Wakefield job opened up. And so when I got the job at Wakefield, I was 30 years old, and I was like, I'm gonna win, and I'm gonna win now. And that's all I thought. It was nothing less. And then I started off this thing, and my first game was against Bob McKeag. We're playing Westfield, and great Bob McKeag is my first game against, and we lose the game by like 12 or something. But he comes up to me and he puts his arm around me and he says, "Young fella, you're gonna be okay. I saw the team last year. I saw the team this year. You're gonna be okay." And hearing those words from guys like Bob McKeag, made me continue to go on. And in that first year, we finished the year 12-13. But the thing about it is anything can happen in the district. So in the district, we made a run and we made it to the district championship game. So we lost that first year in the district championship game, but I got a taste of it. And I was just like every coach. I made my team sit on the bench as Falls Church won the district championship that year. And I made them sit out there crying, upset, and everything. And I made them sit there and see what it felt like. So then the next year coming back, we made it back to the district championship and we beat a tough Edison team in the district championship led by Ivan Thomas.
Awesome.
And so then 19-6, but we go to the first round of the regionals and we lose. So, okay, fine. So then the third year, we got all the pieces and we had a transfer kid come in, Nate Eilert from Germany, that just changed our whole program. And he was the missing piece for the guys that I had. I had everybody coming back except for a couple guys, but Nate was a guy that changed everything for us. And so, boom, yeah, we start off 5-0. We win our Christmas tournament, which was stacked and loaded with teams from Maryland, DC, and unbelievable. So we get over that hump. And then we had to go down to Hayfield early in that season to play those guys. You got Charlie Thompson. Here I'm third year coach. I got Charlie Thompson. I'm looking down at the sideline, scared, shaking in my boots. That's Charlie Thompson. Respectful. That's Charlie Thompson. And so, you go on. We beat Hayfield at Hayfield, and then it just starts to steamroll. And then, our fans, the community, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in the regional championship game. We win, we go to states, and, things happen or whatever. But yeah, I'm thinking, all right, that's how it's going to be. So next year, we're supposed to win the state. We won the region, we're going to win state. And then we went on a drought. We went in 2005, we went to the state tournament, and we went back again in 2007. And then we didn't sniff anything from the state tournament or regional tournament for about 7 or 8 years. And there were some down years. And, I questioned myself. And like you said, did we start off too early? But, you can never say, did you start off too early? Because that's what you expect every year. And every year you come in saying you want to win the championship. But my goals were realistic. It wasn't necessarily saying we want to win a championship. It was we want to string together a conference, some wins in the conference, because I knew what kind of team I had. So I wasn't going to set the expectations on these guys of what the 2005 team did or what the 2007 team did. It was just trying to build our brand back. And me and Coach Willis have been together forever. We talk every day, nightly about the things that each team needs. And so, yeah, did we start off blazing saddles? Yes, we did, and so we thought that was going to continue. And so now looking back at it, in 2013 to 2018, we made a run to the state tournament every year in that because we put our time in. And I think there's a lot of coaches who come in like me, thought that, oh, it's easy. It's going to happen every year. And so I was blessed. And I know it's funny to say that I was blessed to have those down years because it made me a better coach because I thought that it was going to be like that every year. So I had to go to clinics. I had to go to practice. I had to find out what's going to make it work because as was that Rick Pitino said, Larry Bird, those guys weren't walking in the door. Alex Irma was gone. Kenny James was gone. Jeffrey Crawley was gone. So I had to find new inventions of doing things at Wakefield, and it worked, and now we're in that drought again. But I think I know how to handle it now for when we do come out of this drought, because we're going to come out of the drought.
Of course. Yeah, and you can't control when the success hits. I mean, the pieces fell. It's not like you're going to say, look, Alex, we don't want you to win too many games this year. I want to win till I'm ready. It happens when it happens. I did a podcast with Jill Ellis. Jill, I went to high school with Jill. She was a national girls women's soccer team coach for a while. She won, I think, 2 World Cups and 1 Olympics, or maybe I got that confused. And one thing she said success is not always a good teacher. Failure is often a better teacher. You don't learn a lot of lessons when you win everything. Sometimes you learn the wrong lessons. So anyway, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and we'll get back to those seasons. We'll get back to those seasons. Before we go back to your background quickly, you just kind of alluded to this. How'd your summer league go? Generally, what are your prospects for this year? Are there things that you learned during COVID? For example, scouting other teams because everything's online. Are there things that you learned that you're excited about for this year coming up?
I'm very excited, and I'm starting my 20th year at Wakefield. It's funny to say that, but starting my 20th year at Wakefield, And I'm still the same me that I started back in 2002. Excited. I've got a young team. We had 10 seniors last year, kind of on purpose.
Mm.
You know, the COVID year, I would, and no disrespect to these guys, I love them to death, but in a regular year, maybe 6 of those guys wouldn't even made the team. But because it was a COVID year, we were able to keep these guys because they didn't have a season, you know, seniors, life was just tough. So we kept a lot of seniors so they could have something. So we graduated 10 seniors and we knew what was happening. My freshman team this year went undefeated. Last year, should I say, went undefeated. So we're going to gamble and we're going to go with these young guys. There's going to be a lot of sophomores with us this year. But I'm very excited to coach these guys. They're bringing the youth back in me, you know, with the laughing and joking and things. With these guys are so young, they keep me young. And so I'm excited about what's happening. We just competed in Fairfax's summer league. And I told the guys at the start, I'm going to put you guys in this. It's going to be some good competition, but I don't expect for us to win one game. And they kind of looked at me and there's nobody on this team with any experience. You know, I got one guy coming back from last year's team with varsity experience. And I can't even really say that because we played 10 games last year in the COVID year. So he doesn't really have experience. So I just set the expectations low for those guys. But we ended up finishing 5-5 and making it to the playoffs and losing in the first round to Doug Westfield in the first round of the playoffs. But it was a great experience for these guys to see what it takes and what it's going to be. So I'm excited about the next few years here at Wakefield, hopefully for the next 10 years at Wakefield, but I'm excited for what's going to happen for the next few years for these guys. So, you know, and COVID, to your question, COVID as an old guy now, has taught me a lot. I was one of those guys, you know, you got to have practice every day. You got to have 2 hours, 3 hours in the gym. Man, COVID slowed all of that down and made me realize, you know, if we get in the gym for an hour, we get an hour and a half, we do what we need to do. That's all you need to do. It made you sit back and realize that, you know, life is going to slow down, man. And it really slowed us down and made me change my different practice schedule, times and things like that. So, you know, COVID was terrible, but it also made me slow down and look at things differently. So I'm fortunate for it and excited about what's going to happen for Wakefield in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, good luck. I can't wait to come out and watch a game. Yeah. So let's go back to your basketball beginnings and actually more than that, where you grew up. I think you said in the movie your mother went to Wakefield.
Yes.
So you must be a native of South Arlington.
Born and raised in Green Valley.
Oh, right? Valley.
So cool. Everybody knows I'm Green Valley, man. So South Arlington, and that's the thing that, you know, in the 80s, they did the busing, and so, you know, I missed my opportunity to go to Wakefield. I had to get on a bus and go past Wakefield every day to go to Washington Lee. Well, it's Washington Liberty now, and so it hurt because as a kid, the community here at Wakefield, man, is nothing like it. You know, the teams that they've had in the past, the history. And I had to realize, Julian, you talk about, you know, winning too fast. When that third year, you know, we set the record of most wins in school history and things like that. So you got to imagine 30 years old, I'm walking around King Bentley, you know, and so everything was great. And I had to really realize, I went in the library and I went and looked through the yearbooks. And I started looking at the history of Wakefield. You know, at the time, I think only 5 head basketball coaches at Wakefield history. And I'm number 5 and the first Black coach at Wakefield. You know, so it's crazy to think of things like that. But I started looking at the yearbooks and I started looking at those teams in the 60s and the state championship teams. And I sat to myself that day in the library and I said, you know what, my man, this is way bigger than you. It's way bigger than you. So for you to have that little run you had, it means nothing. And so from there, I started to invite the teams back and have nights. I did the 1969 team, had those guys back. And Mr. Vandell, bless his soul, was the 1969 regional championship team. And I had him back with all of his guys. Well, it wasn't all of them because some of them had passed on. But I sat in the room. We had a hospitality room before the game and let them guys talk. And I just sat in the corner and watched Mr. Vandell. It's 40 years later with his guys, and to see that, and I just realized how much it was bigger than me. Wakefield basketball was way bigger than me. And then you take Coach Veldran, who was here for 31 years, the things that he did at Wakefield, and it was hard to take this job on knowing Coach Veldran. I knew Coach Veldran. I played against Coach Veldran's teams. I went on trips with Coach Veldran, great friends with Coach Veldran. and then had to step in and replace him. All I wanted to do was just be, keep what he had started going and don't mess it up. Yes, I wanted to put my spin on things, but Coach Veldran, man, is a legend. 443 victories, 31 years. Yes, I know his stats because I talk to Coach Veldran. I tell him all the time, I want to beat his stats. And he tells me all the time, you need to beat my stats, so it's things like that I realize that the community in Arlington is like no other. Where you can get a grandmother to cuss you out because you lost the game, and then it's just community and how much that they want to win, yesterday, so taking on that job, it was a big responsibility for me. Growing up in this neighborhood, I've talked about it all the time. I'm still little Tony to a lot of people, and I'm waiting one day to just be coach, but I'm always going to be little Tony to a lot of people in this neighborhood.
Did you go to Star Barbershop?
Come on, man. Did I go to Star Barbershop? Yeah, Ronnie, Mr. Crawley, everybody, had to go to Star Barbershop.
So I grew up in the suburbs. So nowadays, I mean, there are black barbershops everywhere. But
yeah,
back in the old days, there wasn't that many African Americans out in Fairfax, where I lived.
Uh-huh.
And there was a couple of historic black neighborhoods, like on Zion Drive and down on Bragg. There were a few, but it wasn't like that. So we would come in and we'd all get in our car, we'd come in and start barbershop. Yeah. And then, we were kind of shy because we were suburb kids. We try to go in there and act hard and stuff. And everybody's looking at us. So, there was Ronnie and there was Crawley. I think
Mr. Crawley.
Yes, Crawley. And Mr. Crawley, Ronnie was a really good barber.
Yes.
He was a good guy, but he wouldn't.
Yeah.
So we wanted Ronnie, and sometimes Mr. Crawley would just be sitting there. There'd be 12 people waiting for Ronnie. And we were all too polite to say no to Mr. Crawley. So
wait, Julie, let me tell you it's a quick story because we would always tell the new guys when they come in, they didn't know. So we'd be waiting for Ronnie and Mr. Crawley, come on up here, boy, come on up here. And so when they cut his head, he would always leave this little mark. And we said, he got that Mr. Crawley mark in his head. We would laugh. So the barbershop is when you've made it, when the barbershop guys, when they're talking about you in the barbershop. But got great stories about Star Barbershop.
Star Barbershop. Is it still up? Is it still open?
It's still up. Ronnie still runs it. It's still there.
Ronnie's still cutting it. He's gotta be in the 60s or something.
He's the old man now in the barbershop, and I hope he ain't giving you the Mr. Crawley marks.
No, I don't have any hair, and I can't justify going to the barbershop anymore. Yeah. But you gotta tell him Julian said hi.
Yeah, I definitely will.
So were your parents into sports at all? Did they put pressure on you? Yeah.
No, so it's funny, man. I was raised by my grandparents right on Lowell Street in Arlington. My mom and dad were around, but my grandmother was the best thing that could ever happen to my life. And I moved with my grandmother at the age of 4. And being raised with grandparents, it was all about, graduating high school and doing your Saturday chores. So if you play sports, you play sports, but it wasn't really big. I can count on my hands. My grandmother came to maybe one game. And, I was more of a football player than I was a basketball player. I played both, but I come home after scoring 3 touchdowns in a football game. And I come home and I tell my grandmother and she's like, yeah, take the trash out.
Exactly.
There was no onus on in my family. My cousin, I had a female cousin, Margaret Bentley, who was a superstar athlete at Washington Lee. She was a softball player and a basketball player who I looked up to because she was good. But there was really and my cousins, I didn't come from a big family of athletes. I wasn't even the best or anything like that, but I did play a lot of sports growing up because of my community and my friends. It was what we did. These kids sit in the house nowadays and play games. We stayed outside all day long and played basketball. We rode our bikes. I mean, we did everything. You had to, force us to come inside the house, So I didn't have a big push of playing sports. But later on, I found out that I was, pretty good. I won't say pretty good, but I was tough in sports. So it followed me through. If I didn't have sports, it wouldn't have got me out of high school. I can tell you that right now. So I was very fortunate to have neighborhood people to help me play sports. So it wasn't my parents or anything like that, but I had a guy in our neighborhood that everybody knows, Alec Bownight, was very instrumental. He was Kenny Staton's uncle. And he coached all of the Little League teams when we were kids. And we all died to play for Bownight. We wanted to play on Bownight. And So I also had another coach, Carlton Newton, who helped me out when I started playing early, Red Top Cab. So I had guys in my neighborhood that would pick us up. Again, I was raised by my grandparents, so would pick us up, take us to practice, take us to the games. And we would spend all Saturdays and things with these, guys in our community. And my grandparents knew them. So it was not even a problem to be with them all day long. So guys in the neighborhood, whether it was the coaches or also what we called at the time, the old heads, the 16 to 17-year-olds, they were the ones that took us under our wings and took us to play basketball and things like that. So that was my big influence in my neighborhood, which was Green Valley.
Yeah, where did you play? Where'd you play your pickup?
So pickup, we played at Drew, we played at Carver, we played at a little bit of TJ, but we would come out there to Nottoway. We come out there. Oh yeah, we come out there anywhere there was a game. We played at Lacey Woods. We played everywhere where there was a basketball game. We get in the cars or we ride our bikes and we go play ball. And we have our 5. They had their 5 and stuff like that. I don't think kids are doing that nowadays. These kids are so spoiled with air conditioning and AAU and stuff like that. Like right now, it's the index is crazy, but I guarantee we would have been out there playing basketball, back in the day, and that's just what we did. So, but yeah, we played everywhere against everybody, and it was a lot of fun. And
you didn't play travel basketball, right?
Man, travel basketball. No, it was, our neighborhood basketball. We didn't have travel basketball growing up. If we did, I didn't know anything about it. My grandmother probably couldn't afford it. So, we played in the neighborhoods and things like that. And I think I talk about it all the time with Green Valley, the way it was, a small Black community. We all grew up together. We all played Little League together and dominated. We dominated. And then by the time we got to high school, they drew a line right through our neighborhood. And guys went to Yorktown, guys went to WNL, guys went to Wakefield. It just separated us all. So we didn't have those powerhouse teams like you would have had TC Williams back in the day where everybody went to TC Williams and they were dominant. We would have had the exact same thing if we would have had like maybe one high school in Arlington, but they divided us up and sent so many Black kids to Yorktown, so many Black kids to WNL and Wakefield, and it just divided us up. People talk about that all the time. If we were all together, what it could have been.
So you end up going to where'd you go to middle school?
So again, I got TJ, which is right next to me, and I had to go all the way to Williamsburg. As a little kid getting on a bus. I Drew Elementary is the elementary school in the Valley, and I had to go to McKinley. So I had to catch a bus, which is one street over from Falls Church. Wow. So, people don't understand, why didn't you go to your neighborhood school? It wasn't like that in the 80s. They sent you to where you needed to go. And so I had to travel to McKinley Elementary, and I had to travel to Williamsburg Middle School, and then went on to Washington Lee High School to be a student there.
Yeah, so my kids go to Williamsburg, Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown. Yeah. And I mean, they're less than 1% Black. I mean, I think Yorktown's a little bit more than Williamsburg is almost no black kids anymore, which is a shame.
It's definitely changed. And I will say, we had a great guy in Williamsburg back in the day, rested. So Mel Labatt, he was our basketball coach. He was a tennis guy. And, we had a handful of Black kids that we stuck together because it was us from the Valley going up there. And there was a couple kids from Halls Hill, the other Black neighborhood. And so, we all
by the hospital.
Yeah. Yes, right by the hospital. So it's pretty much 3 is Johnson Hill, Halls Hill, and Green Valley. And you go there now, it's not the same. It's not, I remember if I did something wrong, by the time I made it to the top of my hill, I had already got spanked 3 times, by the families that knew us all. And then got spanked when I got home, so, and it was just how it was back then. The communities aren't the same. I drive through the Valley now. It's a little bit different. It's just not the same. But yeah, we had to, spread around through Arlington. We never all played together.
Okay. So you end up going to Washington Liberty now. And so did you play basketball right away? And who did you play for?
Yeah, so in basketball, I got there and, I thought I was the man, I'm right on the freshman team. Mr. Hill was my coach as a freshman, and then I played JV for Mr. Hatch. And then my varsity years, I played under Dale Bethel, who Dale Bethel was, right there with Wendell Byrd. Wendell Byrd and Dale Bethel were the 2 Black coaches at WNL in South Lakes. And he was there for about 10 years. And so my junior year, Dale Bethel was the one who coached the Palmer brothers, Walter and Crawford. He coached Jackie Moore. He coached Tim Rayford. You name all the guys he coached. So he was the head coach at WNL for a long time. So my junior year was his last year. And so he moved and left or whatever and became a counselor, I believe. Oh, no, he was already a counselor, but he moved. And so which opened the door for me to change my whole life was John Phillips, who was a longtime assistant coach at Yorktown High School. He came in my senior year and, not only changed me as a person, but was my high school coach my senior year. And to this day, he's still my mentor. He's 70 years old, man. He might be 75. He's going to kill me if he sees this, but I think he might be 75. And he's my guy who came in and just changed my whole life and made me understand basketball, and not only basketball, but how, you want to be treated. He just treated us with respect and taught us the game of basketball and about hard work and things like that. And so just was a great guy to play my high school basketball for 1 year under him. But in football football was my thing. And, I came there, I played under Joe Musket. A lot of people who watch this, Joe Musket was my guy and, taught me about football. I would run through a wall for Joe Musket and ask him why I ran through the wall afterwards, but I had already ran through the wall. He was a great motivator. So I take a lot of things as far as my coaching from Joe Musket and from John Phillips, who are two very instrumental guys in my life. But Coach Phillips is and I'll tell you a little bit more about him because he went on after he left WNL. He went and coached with Gary Hall out at Herndon, and then he also coached with Wendell Byrd at South Lakes. So he's been instrumental in my life. He's big time. We don't win a regional championship in 2014 against Potomac if it wasn't for Coach Phillips. I had to call him. I needed him to go scout Big Bad Potomac. Potomac was 27-0 at the time, and they've got everybody on their team. They're loaded. And I needed Coach Phillips to go scout them. And he puts together a scout report for me that was second to none. And we had to go execute it. And we ended up beating Potomac in the regional championship that year, all because of Coach Phillips.
As a coach, what exactly are the things that you implement now that you learned from Coach Phillips, or is it just the way he handled the team in general?
I think the way he handled us, he got to know me, and so I think I took that on as I want to make sure I know who my kids are, not just, coaching these guys from November to March, lifetime, and you think about that. Coach, I graduated from Washington Lee in 1990, and here it is 2021, and I'm still calling my high school coach for not just basketball things, but life things. And that relationship that I have with Coach Phillips is paramount because I'm not where I am today if it wasn't for Coach Phillips. When I left Washington Lee, I went to Norfolk State for a year and I had a kid, and Coach Phillips found out that I was home, and he calls me and he says, I want you to come coach with me. And he's like, I'm like, Coach, I haven't finished school yet. He says, listen, you got to get your foot in the door. You can make lateral moves, but I want you to come coach with me. And I started coaching at WNL with Coach Phillips. My first year, we had 9 guys on the team. I was the 10th man in practice every day. I'm 20 years old. I practice every single day. At the end of it, I remember him telling me, I don't have much money to pay you. And I was like, money? I didn't even know I was getting paid. I was having so much fun just learning every day under Coach Phillips of what it took to be a coach. And so I didn't know at the time that he was grooming me for what it is today. And, from that second year, he said, you're ready to be the freshman coach. And no assistant, anything like that. I got 15 guys. And he knew what he was doing with me. And he's just very instrumental in my life. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for John Phillips believing in me. And from there, I coached football and basketball at Washington Lee. And from there, Coach Musket was my high school football coach, was the clock guy at all the basketball games. And so he saw me. And after one game, he comes to me and says, Bentley, you're going to coach my JV football team next year. And I was like, guys, no, you're the head coach. Like, just sprung into motion like that. So I coached football at Washington Lee as long as I did basketball. And I could do that because I was a JV head coach in football and a JV head coach in basketball. Once you become a varsity coach, it's tough to coach any other sports. But I did that for years. And in 1999, I told myself, I got to make a decision. I want to be a head coach one day. I can't keep doing both. So I gave up football. I actually, Julian, it's a funny story. I actually gave myself a plaque. I gave myself a plaque with 1992-1999 on it, put a picture of myself on it, and retired myself from football because I really wanted to be a football coach. And those cold October and November nights made me say, nah, I think I want to do basketball. So I really focused in on basketball and started going to more clinics and things like that. But I still miss football. And our football coach right now, Wayne Hogwood, asked me every year, because I was coaching football when Wayne was playing at Wakefield. He asked me every year, you still want to coach football? Because he knows that itch is right there. But now I'm a basketball coach now.
Did coaching football make you a better basketball coach?
Absolutely. And I say it to these kids now that, specialize in one sport. Football gives you that mental toughness, being out there, and it transpires over into basketball when it gets tough. But yeah, I think these kids, should definitely be doing more sports.
No, I mean, as a coach, coaching football make you a better basketball coach? As you learn things from being a football coach?
Yeah, you see different things and how you would handle different situations from football to basketball. So some of my football, I won't say knowledge, but my football days had me thinking about what would I do in a timeout and watching things like that from my football days. So yeah, I think being able to coach multiple sports, just like Red saying that the kids playing multiple sports helps you all in your development of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you though. So you believe that kids should play multiple sports?
And listen, I get why they don't. When you have a situation where you have football going on and kids are playing football, and so now you got basketball, we got fall league, we got all this stuff leading up to it. So if a kid is missing fall league, he's feeling like I'm behind. So then they want to start to specialize into one sport. But the good ones are going to be able to adapt with playing football, playing basketball, and playing baseball, or running track, or whatever it may be. You're not going to fall behind. I just think that the toughness that it gets you through. Some of my best players have been 2-3 sport athletes. Lukai Hatcher just graduated from me this year. Probably one of the best athletes that I've coached. Not best basketball player, because by far, he probably won't even rank in my top 15 to 20 players. But because of that kid's will and his drive, football, basketball, track, he was an athlete. And I know I could always count on him because of his toughness. And, he was the player of the year in our conference, offense and defense. And like I said, he's not even one of the top 20 guys to play basketball at Wakefield. But his mental toughness, and now he's playing football at Norfolk State. So, just you having those guys to play different multiple sports, and we've been at it. Every coach, Wayne Hogwood, who's a football coach here, we always sit down and talk about, okay, who's playing football, who's playing basketball, let's work out something. Can he make this? Can he make that? So I think every school should have in place where the football coach and the basketball coach or the baseball coach are all on the same page and are good for the kids. But you get these coaches who think that they going to turn this kid into a one sport athlete and try to make him play one sport. I think that's wrong. That coaches can't work together in the same building to try to make our athletes better. It's got to be a way where the AD or whatever brings in everybody together to say, let's work together for common goal, because we're not going to win any championships if we don't have the best players out there. So it's crazy to have kids specializing in the one thing. Now, Alex Ermer, 6'7", Mr. Do-It-All on the basketball court. Yes, he's probably the only kid that I said, your ass ain't playing football. He's probably the only kid, because I knew what his future was going to be was basketball. But everybody else on that team, Kenny James was the leading tackler on the football team that year. Jeffrey Crawley was one of the best tight ends on the team. Anthony Allen, all those guys played football and transitioned. That 05 team were all football players that came play basketball. So I'm a firm believer that these kids should be, doing more when they can, if they can. So I just wish that more schools and coaches would, come together for the greater good of the kid and for the school to be together.
One thing I learned from Coach Jewell that I didn't know is if they played multiple sports, they're less likely to go to private school because
that's true too.
Football.
Yeah, because you're involved. Yeah, you're involved with your school. And I tell the kids all the time, like, all these kids say, I'm going D1, I'm going D1. If you're blessed enough to go to D1, if you're not the top guy, you're going to sit on the bench for 3 years maybe, or maybe get in your senior year for senior day or something like that. But if you go to a small school, Division III school, Division II school, where you can be a big fish in a little pond, what's going to happen is you're gonna most likely you're gonna graduate. You're gonna stay at that school because now you are acclimated to the school. You feel like you're somebody, and so you have a more a way about yourself, about the school. So yeah, you got to find what fits you, but I think these kids should be playing most multiple sports. And I know we can talk all day long about private school versus public school and, all that type of stuff. It's for some people and it's not for some people, and a lot of them find out and they end up coming back, and we've seen that with success of a lot of schools recently winning state championships and things, kids who go and come back. And like Doug said it the other, he said, I'd rather them go now, go get that experience and then come back. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't been fortunate enough to get too many kids leave, but recently I have. Kids are leaving because they think that the grass is greener on the other side. And I say to them all the time, man, if you just water your own grass, it'll grow.
Exactly. It's a little bit easier for Doug than you, just a little bit, because there's many more private schools near you than there. I mean, there more private schools seem like they're coming up every day out there, but I mean, they're always they're just a bus ride away from you.
Yeah.
So Bobby must have showed up. Coach Dobson must have showed up pretty soon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was at Washington Lee for 2 years before Bobby got there. So now I'm coaching freshman basketball. My freshman teams are going, 16-2, 17-1. So I'm just, a hot guy, So when the job opened up, everybody, oh man, you should be the coach. But I'm 20 years old, 21 years old. I'm not ready to be a varsity basketball coach. People don't understand that X and O's is great, but it's so much more to being a varsity basketball coach. And so I didn't even put my name into the job. I was just waiting and hoping that whoever got the job would keep me on. I didn't know Bobby at all. I remember, I can still see it right now, him sitting in the office waiting to be interviewed. And I walked in because I was walking by seeing who was getting interviewed. I remember seeing him. And then I remember a couple of days later when he did get the job, we talked. And because Bobby was coaching at O'Connell at the time. He was a JV coach at O'Connell. And he came over and he was working at Yorktown. And so he came and he asked, would I want to stay on his staff, and I try to play it off like, but definitely wanted to stay on his staff. And from day one, Bobby became my brother. He looked after me. He taught me so much stuff like I didn't know. And his famous line to me always was, you need to grow up. You need to grow up. And so Bobby was always teaching, but he never thought I was listening. He never thought I was listening because I was, young and whatever. But he was always telling me I need to grow up. And so our relationship to this day it's tough. And I know one of the questions, like, coaching against Bobby, which, coaching against your mentor, is my first year at Wakefield. We're in the same conference with WNL. That was the hardest thing of getting the job, is that I know now I got to face Bobby twice, sometimes 3 times a year. And so I remember my first time playing against Bobby. I was so nervous. We're playing at WNL. It was packed. And all of his guys were my JV guys that I had the year before. So the emotions were running high. And when I tell you, they beat us so bad. It was so bad. I think Bobby just was like, yo, just want you to know that I'm your teacher, and so they just so bad, and so it drew something to me that I always wanted. I wanted to beat WNL. I wanted to beat them so bad, and it wasn't because of Bobby, but because I wanted to show Bobby that I was listening, and that everything he taught me in those 8 years paid off, and that I'm coaching because of Bobby Dobson, and he always said, listen, if you do good, then it makes me look good because you came from my tree. And so I treat that with, like, man, if I do something positive, it's a reflection on Bobby. So the relationship that Bobby and I have is way more than coach. It's brothers. Like, we are brothers. And when we go against each other, when the ball goes up, we want to beat each other bad. But when it's over, it's over. And I think, for Bobby being in this game for so long, and last year, the 19, right before we had the COVID year, him making it to the regionals championship game against Centerville, and they beat us. I was so hurt for my guys, but you got the emotions that go into this thing when you have coaches, and we are coaches this is a fraternity. we're all good friends, whether you believe it or not. We let the fans fight it out, who's this and that. But while the fans and things are fighting, we're at the bar having a beer together, talking about the game, because it's a fraternity. And that's why I try to, these young coaches who come in to Northern Virginia, who, think that they're this and think that they're that. Yo, my man, it's a fraternity and we fight for each other. And if, you don't want to get into the fraternity, it's going to be hell for you with 30 something coaches that are all good friends. Yeah. When the ball goes up, we all want to win, but it's a tough situation to coach against. And now that I've been around forever, I'm now coaching against a lot of good friends. It's hard. I want to win just like they want to do, but it's hard coaching against, good people and good friends and people who do things the right way. So Bobby Dobson is my guy, and, he's been there forever.
How would you describe Coach Dobson's coaching style, and what exactly did you learn from him that you used?
So if you know Bobby Dobson, if you ever been to a WNL game, Bobby's yelling at his players, at the referees before the jump ball even goes up. And so we are a lot different in that way. So being on the bench with Bobby for 8 years or 9 years, whatever it was, I watched a lot of things Bobby did, and I took a lot of things with me that Bobby did, and I left some things to Bobby, because that's Bobby Dobson. You can't be Bobby Dobson. One thing about Bobby Dobson, man, is he has a small circle, and people don't understand that. They take him, they look at him and think he's this angry black man or whatever. This guy's the biggest teddy bear ever, but he'll never let you know that. And he sees his interview, he's gonna go crazy, but he's the biggest teddy bear ever. But this guy has passion for Washington Liberty. He has passion for his players, and he could care less what anybody thinks about him. As long I've been at games with him sitting on the bench, guys behind the stands, parents, whoever, and they are heckling like crazy. Bobby Dobson, you ain't this. Bobby Dobson, you ain't that. They're going crazy. As soon as they said something about one of his players, that's when he loses it. So he is a guy, and I think with Bobby's brother, Butch, who lives in North Carolina, is a referee. And Bobby can't stand Butch when he has his stripes on. Bobby is just that way. He has always been that way. And he always tells me, you talk to all these referees. I'm like, Bobby, that's just me. That's just who I am. But that's just how Bobby is. So a lot of things that I took from Bobby, one is love my players. And that's what Bobby does. Anybody that plays for Bobby Dobson will tell you that he cares about his players like no other. And he's honest. I think with another thing I took from Bobby was being honest, because kids see through your fakeness. And Bobby's straight shooter. He's going to tell you how it is. I may sugarcoat it, but Bobby's going to tell you how it is. And so I learned a lot of good things from Bobby. I learned how to not jump on the referees at the jump ball, So it's just certain things that I learned from Bobby, but we still talk. I'm the first person he calls. He's the first person I call after our games. It was great that we wasn't in the same conference, because we could share a lot of things. Now we're going back to the same conference, and we got to go coaching against each other for a while. But Bobby means the world to me. We can get rid of all this basketball stuff. Bobby Dobson's going to be in my life until I pass.
So Bobby and I, we grew up playing sports against each other. We didn't really know each other well.
Yeah.
We both were very little guys. We grew late. Bobby was a very tiny guy. So was I. So he played for Northern Virginia basketball with Gus Hill. And I had a stacked team. I had Derek Hensley. I had Derek Turner. And we probably had 3 or 4 Division I players. I was on Braddock Road. And Bobby's team, Gus and Bobby were good players, but they just didn't have any depth. So we'd always beat them. But Bobby and Gus were good. And then Bobby grew. So we always had a lot of respect for each other.
I think people don't realize, because they see Bobby as his coach, Bobby was a hell of a basketball player.
Good player.
He played on the #1 team in the country at Flint Hill as a starting point guard. Yeah. And so people don't see that. So, but Bobby doesn't care if people don't see that. You know what I mean? But I know, and he'll tell you, like, we're close. So he'll tell you all that you should see my tape against Rod Strickland. I killed Rod Strickland. These are things that people don't know, that Bobby was a hell of a basketball player.
There was a whole line of point guards. There was Bobby Dobson. There was Butch Dobson. There was Tom Amker. There was another guy with the long hair, played at Madison, went to Flint Hill too. It's escaped me. He's another one of those Bailey's Crossroad legends. They all had the same game. Really, really crafty Tommy was a little more athletic than the other guys, but they're
Yes.
all a good player. Kevin Sutton.
Kevin Sutton.
they're
Oh, yeah. So all of
the
those,
same.
all of those guys are cousins. Bobby Dobson and Tommy Amick are first cousins.
That's right.
People don't know that,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, Bobby doesn't tell his life story out there, but Bobby Dobson, Tommy Amick are first cousins, and he'll tell you he used to kill Tommy Amick. So all those guys grew up in that Falls Church area together with some really good basketball players back in those days.
Definitely. And they all had the same game. So anyway, I got to tell you a Bobby Dobson story. So I refereed for 20 years. I refereed your game when you first started. I mean, you were fussing at me a lot. I'm like, Coach, you're ahead by 15. So I remember that. So anyway, so I did a regional quarterfinal game with Bobby. It was my last game I ever refereed was Bobby Dobson.
Man.
It was Woodson against Washington Lee. Woodson was definitely favored. They might have been a top 2 or 3 team in the region that year. They had won the Aliberios.
Yeah.
And so Woodson won the game at the buzzer. Aliberio laid it in at the buzzer. And so anyway, it was a really nice game. It's one of those games that's official. You felt like it went well. You called the stuff you had to call. So I go into the locker room after the game, and I thought my partners, I thought we handled ourselves well. We had good chemistry. Well, during regionals, you have a lot of other refs come watch. So after the game, a couple of the refs that weren't refereeing started fussing at some of my calls. One of the things they said, you should have. Why didn't you have a technical with like 3 minutes ago? Bobby's over there going crazy. Why didn't you have a technical foul? Well, first of all, there were 3 referees there. It wasn't just me.
Right.
But second of all, I'm like, well, I'm not giving that. If I didn't call a technical foul, 3 minutes in, I'm not calling that technical foul with 3 minutes to go. This is a regional quarterfinals, and yes, Bobby was boisterous, but it was fine. It was nothing that was out of the ordinary. So I got home that night, and I said, you know what, this is a game that went really well. We had a shot to win at the buzzer. I was the lead. I did not have a foul. The guy went up to try to block the shot. Aliberio made the shot. Nothing. And it's one of those games you felt good about. I let the players determine the game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, after that, if people are going to fuss at you when the game goes right, I can't do this anymore. That was the last game I ever officiated, and it really came down to why didn't you give Bobby Dobson a technical foul? And I'm like, well, he didn't deserve one.
And that's the thing that has haunted me for all these years. That people, they talk about Bobby and they don't really know Bobby. And I guarantee you, every time he's talking to the referee, he's not cussing. He's telling you something that is probably messing with your head. And I get frustrated when people talk about Bobby because I've been with Bobby. The guy is a good guy, man. And I don't know. I get anyway. Yeah.
Well, he's tough on me because he'll say, Julian, you know better. I know you know better.
Right.
I grew up with. Like, So anyway, that's my boy too.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Anyway, let's talk about replacing Veldran. So, because I'm really interested. Veldran was a great coach, a guy that I had a lot of respect for. I like the fact that he took urban kids and he coached them in a very disciplined manner. A lot of times, what the common knowledge was in Northern Virginia is when you had kids from the city, you had to coach them like Mike Henson. You had to let them play. Bobby Veldran didn't let them play. They played a very disciplined Louisville high-low offense. And he kept a tight rein, and he a lot of time, his teams could score a lot of points, but Wakefield might win 55-50. They did not have to always score a lot of points. So I had a lot of respect for him. What did you think about Veldran as a coach, and what did you think about having to replace him?
So again, growing up as a kid, Coach Veldran got to Wakefield in 1971 or 1972. So as a kid, that's all we've ever seen in the neighborhood who was the head coach was Bob Veldran. So he had that aura, he had that respect. That's Coach Veldran. Whether you saw him in the grocery store or you saw him in the gym, it was Coach Veldran. So I think, the discipline that he had instilled in his players is something of legendary status. His top team in 1990, 3 of his best players, they were going to play us. I was on the team at WNL. They're coming to play us. Well, Veldran had a rule: if you didn't have a tie on, you couldn't get on the bus. Mm-hmm. He didn't care if you was the best player or the 15th man. His top 3 players didn't have a tie. The bus took off. They go to WNL. They're warming up. The kids, he went to the ticket booth lady and told the lady, there's going to be 3 kids running in here, frantic. They're going to say they play on the team. They're going to have bags and everything. Do not let them in. Charge them the fee to get in. The kids, exactly how Veldran planned it out. They come running up. We play on a team, Nope. You guys have to pay to get in. They had to find $5 or whatever to get in the game. He was just that way with the discipline for those type of kids that they had back then. They needed that. And when you talk about the style of play that he played, where they win 55 to 54, whatever, I found that out early because I'm just a young guy. I didn't know all of Coach Veldran's styles and strategies and things. And so I found it out early with my first open gym. So a lot of his, former players were in open gym, not former players, current players that were going to be playing for me. We're in open gym and I'm ready to get excited going. And these guys are passing the ball about 8 to 10 times before they even looking at the rim. I had to blow the whistle. And I said, what the hell's going on? Like, Coach, we got to share the ball. I said, listen, not the way I play. 1-2 passes, get a shot up. Well, Coach Veldran made us pass. Those days are over. In order to win, we got to get some points up. We're going to run. So just different styles of basketball when I came in, what Coach Veldran did. But what can you say about a man who gave up 31 years of his life to coaching high school basketball? Whether you liked Coach Veldran or you didn't like Coach Veldran, I respected Coach Veldran now I'm seeing it. I'm 20 years in, 31 years of your life. You think about all the things that man gave up to be with your kids. Like him or don't like him. And the man is a legend to me. And when my best friend played for him, Kenya Hunter, went off to college, we would get these trips together in a 15-passenger van, and we would go to Duquesne University to watch Kenya play, stay overnight, and things. So I was introduced to Coach Veldran from playing against him, and then also after my playing days was traveling with him and being with him and spending time with him. And then people don't understand, when I got the job here at Wakefield, Coach Veldran was here for 2 years before he retired. So there was an office in the gym. I didn't have an office because I was working in special education upstairs as an assistant. And so I'm not in PE. And so Coach Veldran had 2 offices. And so when I came down, one of the offices was a storage closet that Coach Veldran stored all the equipment in for basketball. Well, I took all the stuff out and made that into my office. So I'm next door to Coach Veldran for 2 years. And I would never forget the time that my second year, we're playing against Edison. Edison was top dog. Ivan Thomas had a loaded team. When I tell you loaded, they were loaded. And first game in the district, they beat us. Second game in the district, we played them, they beat us. So we go 10-2, and they go 12-0. Only 2 teams at that time was Wakefield and Edison. And so everyone's waiting for the big matchup for Edison and to go. So I remember telling Coach Willis, I said, Coach, you take the first VHS tape home and break it down. I'll take the second one. Let's see what we can do to try to beat Edison. Whatever. I go into Coach Veldran's office and I said, Coach Veldran, man, we got Edison, man. This is what they do. This is what they do. And he looked at me as only Coach Veldran can do. He says, listen, all you got to do is beat them one time. He said, those 2 games mean nothing. He said, you just got to beat them one time. And it's like a storybook end, and he walks out the office and goes, just leaves me with that. And so Coach Willis and I go, we break the tapes down, and lo and behold, we beat Edison in the championship game. And I just think back to Coach Veldran, just small little, subtle little things that those old guys, man, knew what to say. He knew, this is your time now. I'm not going to mess this up by telling you what I would do, what I did back in 1980. He just said, look, all you got to do is beat them one time. Trust in yourself. So people don't understand that, when Coach Veldran left, I had no issues with Coach Veldran. Coach Veldran had no issues with me. We talked and we still talk. We lost in 2007 in a state game against GW Danville. And when I tell you I don't ever want to go down there ever again, we got our butts beat. And I remember coming back and my phone rang and I looked down, it's Coach Veldran. And the first thing with that voice, like, well, you took that ass whooping, didn't you? So he knew, because a couple of years in the 90s, he went down to GW and got the same treatment. So, it was things like that, that replacing Coach Veldran, I'm going to be honest, it was hard because of the loyalists to Coach Veldran. They probably wanted one of his guys to get the job. And here I am from WNL, the rival school, a JV coach, hadn't done anything. And I come in to replace Coach Veldran. And who am I? And then again, we go back to Bobby Dobson. Bobby Dobson's this guy for WNL. He was kicking everybody's butt back then, but he's this yeller. He's screaming at everybody. So here I am. I'm Bobby Dobson's protege. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be a Bobby Dobson. So it took me, and that's why I gave up so much stuff my first few years, because I don't know, I wanted to prove people that I could do this job, but I wanted to make sure that I set my stamp on what I wanted to do. Because for 31 years, Coach Veldran did it, and he did it his way. And I knew coming in, I didn't have anything to lose. He had already set the bar high. So all I wanted to do was just maintain it, and then at the end of the day, try to pass it. But there was a lot of naysayers. I have an article framed on my wall in my office at home. It says, "Not bad for a JV coach." That was the title. That was the title of it. But it was a good title, because when the reporter came up to me, we had talked about your third year, you won your regional championship game. And, Coach Veldran, I guess at the time, had won one regional championship. And I won it in my third year. And this reporter knew that I was just this JV coach at W. Everybody was talking about. So the title is great. Not bad for a JV coach.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was I love that article. It's up on the wall and things like that. But Coach Veldran, for what that man did for Wakefield, that's why everybody calls him a legend. He's a legend, and the things he did at Wakefield. And so very honored to come in behind. It's not easy coming in behind a guy like that, but why not come in behind somebody that had set the bar high? And so just to try to maintain it. But very, very fortunate to be the coach here at Wakefield, and to follow Bob Veldran was special.
So, one thing that, Doug and I talked about a little bit, Coach Yule and I talked about, is we do kind of idolize the older coaches.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is because they were coaches when I was young. So I have, when I think about the younger guys, I'm older than you guys. So you guys aren't legendary status to me.
Right.
You're those guys. Those guys used to fuss at me all the time.
Yeah.
So,
right.
It's a little thing. But when you think about the way those guys coach, like, the Louisville high-low or the old school, do you think you can win in today's game with those kind of methods? Or do you think guys like Veldran, if they coached today, would have changed and they would have embraced the way the game is today?
That's a great question. I think the way the game has changed, I'm not for sure if the Louisville, the BC, the things that Coach Veldran ran, not for sure. Basketball is basketball, but the kids and the era has changed. I run a basketball camp, and 7-year-olds come in. First thing they do, they grab a ball, they shoot a three. Everything has just changed so much. So you have to change with what's going on. I don't do the things that I did in 2002. So you have to change. And to say, could Coach Veldran, could Coach McKay, could those guys adapt and change? Absolutely. You have to, or you would get ran out of here. So I think the styles that you want to play, like Coach Veldran's teams, they got up and down the court when it was time. Me, I want to get up and down the court every time. So, it's just, my motto is that, I don't want to play zone. I want to play man to man, so I think you have to adapt. I think all those coaches, because they're great coaches, you don't get to be called a legend if you can't adapt to what's going on around you. And to the fact of us, I don't see myself as a legend. I still see myself having years to go. I'm putting in some work. But Coach Phillips and I, who I talk about all the time, he grew up in the era of Oscar Robertson. So it's no way I can tell him that Michael Jordan's better than Oscar Robertson. So I'm on the phone with Kenya, his son, Jalen, who plays at Old Dominion now. I cannot tell him that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. It's era. And I get that now. So I don't fight with nobody anymore about who's the best, because it's all about your era. And so it's the same thing with coaches. It's era. Those guys went down in history as what they did. And hopefully some of us that we're coaching, we'll go down and we'll be talked about 40 years, 50 years from now and things like that. So can they adapt? Yeah, I think we all would have been able to adapt.
Yeah. Okay. And also, I think one story that you told on the podcast we did a panel of coaches.
Oh yeah.
Kind of things that are going on in the game. You talked about nowadays parents have very high expectations, and dealing with parents is an important part of the game. One thing that Coach Smith said when he got back in the game is he's not going to let parents take him away from what he loves. It's just part of the game. But one thing I thought that you did that was very clever is to try to manage expectations. You took your kids to a Division III game so they can see how tough it is that these boys can play. Why don't we talk? Is this something you do every year? You take your kids to Randolph-Macon, or?
So that was something that I had to do when I first got the job, because you remember, I'm a community guy. I knew all of the guys that was coming back for Wakefield's team. And not only did I know the guys, but I knew the parents. So I grew up with their parents. And some of those parents were what we call the old heads. They were 17 when I was 12 playing, basketball again. So now their son, I'm becoming their coach. So everyone thought when I got the job at Wakefield, oh, my son's going to play. Tony's
Hook
the
it
coach.
up.
Yeah, hook it up, hook me up, So they found out very fast, no, that wasn't going to happen. So, but I do know that they were all talking about D1. I'm a D1 player. And they was also even kind of bad-mouthing Coach Veldran for saying he didn't get any kids to D1. He didn't get this kid there. Well, and I said, but Coach Veldran didn't go to class with these kids. So you got to have grades. It's so many things to have in work ethic. Number one, these kids just think they're a Division I athlete and just going to show up in November to play basketball. No. So I had to, and I knew that these kids didn't know the difference between D3, D2, D1. So Coach Willis and I got the guys in our minivans and we took them down to Randolph-Macon, and we didn't say a word. We just took them to a basketball game. They thought it was a field trip of a basketball game. And Randolph-Macon was playing against Christopher Newport, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a hell of a game. And they're going after it. And after the game, I basically asked the kids, how you guys think you can play here? And they were all like, man, they play hard, man. They play hard. And I just sat back and I said, this is Division III. None of these kids are on scholarship. And if you could have saw the faces, it was like I had, taken something from them. And from that point on, we told them that let's just get back to Wakefield and focus on your high school career and let the chips fall where they may. And so I don't think now with that, I have to do that as much. I don't have to take a trip because of social media, because kids now know what the different levels are of basketball and things like that. But at that time, it was something that was needed. And it was really good because coming back from there, the kids really buckled down and said, yeah, I'm really not that good. You could probably be the water boy for the University of Maryland. That's it. So let's focus on your high school career and see what happens. So I don't have to do that anymore now because of, the game and social media and things like that. But that was necessary to do. And it helped me as a coach. And I don't even know where Coach Willis and I came up with it. We just said, let's take these dudes down and let them see it, because they're in practice in one, but they're talking about day this, day that. And we just sat back and said, let's take them to a D3 game, and I have the utmost respect for Division III players and coaches. And I have a lot of relationships with the young, smaller levels because I try to tell my kids if there's a Division I player here at Wakefield, he probably wouldn't be here because one of the private schools are probably snatching him up anyway. So there's a lot of Division II schools and there's a lot of Division III schools that you can go and play basketball with. So that's my relationship with a lot of those coaches that helps out. So, yeah.
So we talked about the 2005 team, and there's a whole movie about it. And so I think we understand how great they were and what a surprise it was. But we didn't really talk about the 2000. I think it was the 2008 team that you also won the region with. Who was on that team, and what made that team special?
So the 2005 team was the first time we won a regional championship since 1990 here at Wakefield. As you know, the infamous Wakefield and South Lakes game. So then 2005, we made that run and beat a great Hayfield team in 2005. We didn't get back to the regional championship game. We went to the state tournament in 2007, but we didn't even win our conference that year. We got lucky and got hot in the regional tournament, and we ended up facing 2007. We did in 2007. We went to the regional game. We lost to TC Williams in the regional championship game. So we didn't win it. We didn't get back there until 2013. We're playing against Woodson. And
they have the guard. They have the Bulls.
Eric Bowles. So we get there against them, evenly matched two-match teams, but we jump out on them, and we're up 20 points going into the fourth quarter. And I think the thing that kept sticking in my mind, because again, growing up in Arlington in 1990, when Coach Veldran's teams went down to the state tournament, they probably was one of the best teams that year in 1999. You know about all those teams in 1999. Bayside ended up winning the state championship, beating a great Hampton team who beat South Lakes and all of that good stuff. But Wakefield should have been at least playing in the state. Well, anyway, in that game, Wakefield's up 53 to, I don't know, they're up by 14, 15 points going into the fourth quarter. And this is the thing that everybody said about Coach Veldran, the team. They went to a stall game.
They did. That's right.
And to his fairness, the kids came on and 30 years later and said it wasn't a stall. They all owned up to it. But Coach Veldran took a lot of slack for the stall game, and they ended up losing, and they didn't advance, and he never had a team as good as that or anything like that. So anyway, this all playing with me now, right? We're up 20 in the fourth quarter against Woodson, and I'm thinking, don't stall. Don't stall. You cannot go down in history as, Bentley stalled in 2013. So I told my guys, just keep playing, keep doing what you're doing. Let's get, good shots and things like that. Well, nobody at that time, 2013, taught me about Uncle Mo. So Uncle Mo is momentum. And Uncle Mo left our bench and wanted to go sit on Woodson's bench. And they started hitting shots, making shots. And we still played our game. We just didn't make anything. And a kid on that team, Pete Murray, who actually was my first year coaching AAU, was on my AAU team, just started draining threes. And Bowles at the time was like a sophomore, a freshman, maybe. He was young, so it really wasn't his team, but he was the engine that made him go. He got everybody involved. But guys started hitting shots. And Uncle Mo just left our bench and sat on Woodson's bench, and we ended up losing in overtime. And those are some of the games you don't forget, but those are some of the things that you remember and you draw from them. And then in 2014, we have, and I'm sorry, let me go back, because on that team was Corey Moore, who may be one of the best guys ever dress up and put on a Wakefield uniform. We had Corey Moore, Ermias Nega, Jalen Carver, Raekwon Hobson, and a young Dominique Tham, who nobody knew anything about Dominique Tham at all his sophomore year. And we had a Marquay Walton. So we were 6-7 deep with that team, but we were young. Corey Moore and Ermias were the seniors on that team. We were young. Damo, Marquay, all those guys were sophomores. And Damo went out against Robinson in the first round and has a triple-double. He has 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 12 block shots as a sophomore. So he was starting to come into his own. So the very next year, Dominic, his junior year, we changed regions and all kinds of stuff. And here we go. We got to face Potomac, right? Potomac is big, bad Potomac. And we're still young. Dominic and those guys are juniors, but Dominic Tham is coming to his own. He is the man. But they have 6'10" Trey Porter, who was an animal. They had Randy Haynes. They were just loaded, and they were undefeated. But by that year, we weren't at Robinson anymore. And it just took away from everything that, when I first started coaching, it was going to George Mason. That's right. All we wanted to do was go to George Mason and play. It was the highlight of your career. And then when the budget things, they changed, they moved everything back to Robinson. You want to get to Robinson. Well, then now in 2014, a regional championship game could be held at somebody's home site. And because Potomac was on the bottom of the bracket and we were on the top of the bracket, they had to come to Wakefield and play a regional championship game. Unfair, hands down unfair. Thank you, but it was unfair. And so we go to the game against Potomac, and I've got Dominique Tham, Jalen Carver, Marquay Walton, and a big addition that year to our team was Cal Davis, who had transferred from W&L his senior year to take over and be the point guard for us. I mean, without Cal Davis, we don't win a regional championship. We've got Dominique Tham, who's the man, but Cal Davis was the type of player that every opposing team wanted to fight him. And so they would get out of their game, and Cal Davis would know from the beginning, Coach, I got this one. He's worried about me. He ain't worried about nothing else.
He's Draymond Green.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Cal could affect the game by scoring 2 points, but he would have 9-10 assists, and he would have the other team's guy at a technical foul. And so, with the addition of adding Cal Davis to that team that we had, we lost Corey Moore and Ermias, but Cal Davis comes in and plays his role perfectly. And we beat a Potomac team that ended up winning the state championship. So we went and played in the tournament. We ended up losing to Henrico in the semifinals of the state tournament. And we thought we were going to meet Potomac again, and we ended up losing or whatever. So that was the second regional championship that we won. And so, we're back high because from 2013 all the way to 18, we were in the regionals, finals, district championships, or state tournament, that nice long run. So we've had some players that, like you talk about era, that you can name all those guys from the 80s. I'll name these guys. Nobody would know who they were unless it's, some guys, younger guys watching the show, that we had some guys, take it to the limit when you're talking about an Alan Trinkle in a 2017 team, Halil Parks. Then you talk about Amari Cooper in 18 when we went and lost in the state championship game to Verina. Chris Warner. I get to the point where you start doing this, I start naming people and I start forgetting. I'm gonna get in trouble because all these guys. But we've had.
We'll do a disclaimer. Yeah. You love all your kids and
all of them. I love them all. Love them all.
Yeah. Let me ask you the teams you just mentioned, the 2017, 18, 2013, and 14. Yeah. How would they compare to your 2005 team? I mean, has the game, the drain of talent, the private schools affected the game, or do you believe, like Brian Metris, there's still plenty of talent out here?
I agree with Coach Metris. There's plenty of talent. And I think it's hard to ask me that question about my 2005 team, because that 2005 team is special. Like in the video, you saw one of the guys come on, he said that he thought we were so good, he would take them to Washington to play against the Wizards. Yeah. Like, I'm telling you right now, that team was special. And I think the 13-14 team, the 17-18 team may have been more talented, because when we talk about everybody says, oh man, Bill Russell would have did this. Shaq was 200 pounds more than Bill Russell. Shaq would have killed Bill Russell. You know what I'm saying? So you talk about different things that the kids had where, when I was playing, there was no crossover. We made one move and went past somebody. Now they cross over behind the back and they're going. So I think the evolution of the guys getting better, the talented guys would have been better, because they fight all the time is who's better, Alex Irma or Dominique Pham. I let them fight about that because I would never, ever say who's better. We just go off of what the teams did and things like that. So I think my 05 team just holds a special place in my heart that I can't put them up against anybody, because when I did put them up against everybody in 05, they beat everybody except for Lansdowne. So it's tough to compare those eras. But I think good players, because after 05, I thought, what am I going to do? Kenny James is gone. Alex Irma is gone. And then all of a sudden, George Johnson emerges from that team. He was a sophomore in that team. And George Johnson was hands down one of the best players in the region. If it wasn't for Scotty Reynolds being around for all those years, George Johnson was the man. And then you go in a drought, and then all of a sudden, Corey Moore steps onto the scene. And so I can name guys that took the reins over from Corey Moore, who passed the torch on to the next and to the next and things like that. So I think it's tough when you talk about, could my 05 team beat this? My 05 team is a special team. They just was special.
Do you wish they put the Northern region back together again? And there's one way, like, for example, my son's soccer team, Yorktown, they got to the state final. And it was interesting because in the state semifinal, they played West Springfield, which it seems crazy. Yeah. But the good news is, we got to the state final pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, we had to win a lot of games. We beat good teams. But let's face it, if you got 28 teams in the Northern region or whatever, and there's only one winner, or maybe the runner-up goes two, and then you get winner and runner-up from other regions as well, it's going to be a little tougher. So you're going to have less chance to win a state title if you're a Wakefield coach. Do you like it the way it is now, or you wish you'd go back to the old way?
No, I'm old school, because when you say, like, my 05 team that beat Hayfield in the region and then went that, like, that team, you can say what they did to get there. You're talking about the top 4 teams at George Mason that year was W.T. Woodson, Westfield, Wakefield, and Hayfield. So those, cream of the crop, boom, that was it. Now you taking teams that barely do anything in their district, and they're advancing in a regional game. And no, so I'm old school. I wish it went back the same way. Yeah, have we benefited? My 05 team didn't win it. My 13 team didn't win it, but they had a tougher road. My 18 team that went all the way to the final state game was not one of my best teams. We played Edison 5 times that year. Wow. And that Edison's in our conference. We played them 5 times, 3 times in the district, regional, and in state. Wow. And that's no knock against Edison, but it's just the fact that we played Edison 5 times. Like, my 05 guys, they're looking at the 18 team like, Coach, you really count that team? And I'm like, yeah, because they went to the state final game. Yeah, I counted. But it's just the
Yeah.
fact the road was so, I
Yeah.
don't know. You know, it is what it is. And you don't ever slight a state championship or a regional championship. But I just think back then, and even when I was playing, they only took, you know, was it the number one team out of 16 teams or whatever to advance and things like that. So things are just so different. But I like it where it's a little bit tougher. If you don't win, you go home. You win, you move on. So now you got 8 different avenues to get to the state championship. I mean, it's still a state championship, but my 05 guys will tell you, come on, coach. Come on, man.
Yeah. So when I think of Arlington basketball, I think of guys like you, Bobby Dobson, guys that have worked at it, played here in the community. But I also think about Antoine Townsend. Is that guy's name right? So my son played basketball, and Antoine worked with Allen's program.
Yep.
I mean, this guy was magical with little kids, and I remember when my son worked with him, he could tell Chandler's personality, his potential. He really knew kids and how and what they could do as athletes. Did you know Antoine well? Yeah. And what did he mean to you?
So Antoine was, again, I'm older than all these guys. I coached against all of those guys, but in the neighborhoods, I remember all of those guys. And so the WNL Wakefield battles were always special because they were loaded with all of their players and we were loaded with all of our players. So of course I got a chance to know Antoine, especially when I, became the coach here at Wakefield. One thing about the Wakefield, and I'm for sure it's that way with every high school, you have pride in your high school and you want your high school to win. So they come back playing pickup games and things like that. So Antoine was a good guy for our community. His untimely passing was just terrible because he affected so many people. And there's a lot of people that probably didn't even know that he played and was a good basketball player at Wakefield because he had transitioned his life and moved on to becoming helping other kids. And he didn't have to go out and brag about what he did at Wakefield. He was on to the next of helping other kids. A very special young man that the community has definitely missed. And, he, of course, along the line of all the great guards at Wakefield, he falls right into that. And it's so sad. And that's why I try to do my best to make sure that the older guys are remembered because this generation is about now. They could care less about what a Kenya Hunter did or what, anybody did back in the day. It's all about now. So we try to make sure that we do things that these kids know who guys are. And I think this year coming up, I'll be able to talk to my guys about Antoine Townsend and things that he did for Wakefield. So they just know the history of Wakefield basketball. We do a thing, we honor jerseys. We don't retire them because I don't have that much power to retire a jersey, but we honor jerseys. And it was, and Julian, you go back talking about getting to the state championship and things like that. So when I first got to Wakefield, I said, you know what it would be like to come back into the gym and see your jersey up on the wall or honored or whatever. So I'm going to set a criteria because, man, again, this Wakefield's bigger than me, but I'm going to set a criteria. If you make first team all region or better, we're going to honor your jersey because making first team all region back then meant something. Now, the kids coming back saying, yo, coach, you putting his jersey on the wall? Yo, man, he made first team all region. So, so things like that. So we have jerseys in our auxiliary gym for the former guys. And I've got to update it. We got to get going. And, last year before COVID hit, I was about to honor Rob Anderson. I don't know if you remember Rob Anderson from Yorktown, transferred to Wakefield. We had the ceremony all set up, so I got to get back into it. But I think I may have to change my criteria now because we'll flood this wall with a bunch of jerseys that, guys maybe shouldn't be up there. So, we'll see. Yeah, he meant a lot to the community and things like that.
Yeah, great guy. Okay, how about your role models in terms of national coaches, college or pro? Who do you, are there guys that you like to follow? You go to camps or?
Great. If you know me, you know that I am a Michigan State Tom Izzo guy.
That's my guy too.
Kenya is at Indiana now. And he knows when I go to the game, I'm sitting in the Izzo. I'm going. I can't wait. I'm excited about that. But, I just love the things that he does, the toughness with his teams. He's probably an inch taller than me. I love that, So, but growing up, like, you know, like I talked about earlier, Alec Bonite was a guy that we all looked up to in the neighborhood as far as saying that maybe I can coach one day. And when I realized that I was 5'6" and I stopped growing, that's when I said I need to start concentrating on coaching because I want to stay around the game. But people don't understand, like when I started coaching, you know, you take a guy's name like Joe Musket, John Phillips, who were very instrumental in my life. But I mean, Wendell Byrd, I know people talk about Byrd all the time. People probably don't know my relationship with Coach Byrd. Like, and it was because of John Phillips. I worked overnight camp. First of all, I worked at South Lakes camps with Coach Byrd every summer. And then Coach Byrd ran an overnight camp at Salisbury University. And let me just tell you, the staff that we had together was myself, Daryl Branch, Joey Beard, Rob Robinson, Theron Carey, Irv Green. Listen, I can go on to who's who was at these camps. And now just remind you now, Ocean City was only 20 minutes away.
That's
so
right.
When we put the kids to bed, we had some fun. I can't tell you none of the stories on here, but I'm gonna tell you right now. Man.
I bet you've been to secrets one time.
All right, come on now. So listen, I can tell you right now that those days and those times and those nights, and I'm young now. I was 21, 22 years old, and I'm sitting with Coach Byrd and hearing the stories about his teams and what he went through coaching at South Lakes. And again, people like Bobby didn't think I was listening, but I always paid attention. I always make you think like I'm joking, but I'm always listening. Coach Byrd was one of the first ones to make me say, I can do this. He had a basketball camp at his school. He had an overnight camp. And I'm sitting there going like, man, and it wasn't about money or anything like that. It was about the relationships that he was building. And he was bringing his former players back. You know, these guys, Joey Beard, coach, played at Duke and all this stuff, coming back to work camp for Coach. I'm thinking, man, this is what it's all about. If I can just have this one thing to have these kids come back every year. I think Coach Byrd was very instrumental in making sure that we did it the right way. Because if, you know, Coach Byrd, like you see other coaches, you know, hey, what's happening? Coach Byrd was always still, how you doing? How you doing? You know, because it's just Coach Byrd. So I always had a way when I was around Coach Byrd, you know, I was here. That's because just the respect. Like, I don't know how many of these guys have respect for coaches and legend guys anymore. You know, it's crazy. It's a guy in our neighborhood, Mr. McKinney, who taught all of us in football and everything. And people call him Jimmy. It's like, you know, we talked about this on one of our shows. Jim, no, that's Mr. McKinney or Coach McKinney. It's just a respect factor. So like with Coach Byrd, man, like still, I would never call him Wendell. You know, it's Coach Byrd. And, you know, it's just, I wish these kids had more of that today that they just respect. But anyway, Coach Byrd was a guy instrumental in getting my coaching career going on. But I go back to Coach Phillips, who was the one who taught me how to do it and do it the right way. And then, of course, you know, being under Bobby for so long, those are the guys I looked up. But on the national scene, I met Coach Izzo one time and I froze up. I was in Indiana at an AAU tournament. My team had just finished playing and Coach Izzo was coming in to come watch another team. And we're walking right past each other in the hallway. Everything was like slow motion. As I'm coming down the hallway, I'm like, that's Coach Izzo. But all this is in slow motion. I'm like, okay, when he comes up to you, just say, hey, how you doing? Shake his hand, you know, boom. And he comes and gets right next to me. And I kept walking. I just kept walking, you know. And now I was younger, you know, and now if I see him, I definitely would love to stop. But, you know, you take these guys that work their tails off and they don't want you to come up to them and shake their hand, take pictures and things. Because I remember I would go to the Final Four every year with Kenya. Kenya's coach every college team that seemed like everywhere. And so I would go to the Final Fours with Kenya. And I remember my first year, I got my camera on my neck and I'm taking pictures of coaches and Kenya pulls me to the side. He's like, yo, my man, you can't do this. I work with these people. You can't be taking pictures of these guys. So these were like here, Gary Williams was everything. Maryland, come on, man. And I'm talking to Gary Williams and it's like, this is crazy. And so, you know, little nuggets that people don't know. Like I met John Chaney at a Black Coaches Association I was with Mike Harris, who was the lead coach for a long time. People don't know that Mike Harris was at WNL with me and Coach Phillips. Mike Harris was the freshman coach at Washington Lee. I was the assistant varsity with Coach Phillips, and I can't even remember who the JV coach was. Yeah. And so after that, Mike applied for the lead job, but we all coached together. We went to North Carolina for a coaching clinic together. That's how I first met Mike Harris. And I got a million Mike Harris stories where we met Mike Harris and all of that time.
We could do a whole podcast. We could do a whole podcast
yeah.
on Mike
Oh,
Harris.
yeah. But that's why when people are, I hope y'all listen to this podcast, and when you out there talking behind somebody's back, you don't know who knows who, man. You just don't know who knows who. But anyway, because Mike Harris and I, we got in a car together and drove to Indiana because he loves Bobby Knight. We went to a Bobby Knight clinic. Mike Harris and Tony Bentley drove to Indiana to a Bobby Knight clinic. Yeah. So, it's certain things that, go on in life, but coaches that were influential that I can touch, see, and talk to were the guys that are around. But like on that national scene, of course, Izzo is my guy. That's my guy. I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, I love the way his teams defend, especially. Use the chest to defend.
Yes.
If you had to choose one official for a big game, who would you choose?
Wow. So here you go. When you say choose an official, I wouldn't choose any official. And listen, I get along with all officials, but to choose an official, and I'll tell you, because I get along with a lot of officials. When I first started, I told you, I thought it was all about me. And when I realized it wasn't about me, I had to change a lot of things. And so when I first started, I'll give you a story about one official who is to this day is a great friend of mine to this day. But when I first started, I was coaching freshmen at W&L. And it's funny because I was coaching against Wakefield. And it's a 4:00 game. It's maybe 20 people in the stands. And here I am thinking everybody's here to see me. And the referee's making a call, and I'm on this referee, and I'm in him. I'm yelling every 5 seconds at everything he's doing wrong. And it gets to about the fourth quarter. I still haven't stopped yelling. I'm still fussing. He walks over to me and he says, listen, I'm not going to give you a technical foul. And I was like, you need it. I don't care what you do. I'm going high head a couple more times down the court. And finally he comes over and he gives me a technical foul. And he walks over to me and he says, listen, there's ways of how you can talk to referees. There's ways of doing things. We'll listen to you. But what you're doing is just god awful. And I was like, damn, it made me sit back and look. And I'm like, wow, Adam Brick. This was 1992. Adam, doing a 4:00 game. Adam probably wasn't even Adam Brick as we know him. He was doing a freshman game, so he hadn't got his status yet. And so we met back then and have been, good friends to this day. When we had the very first game here at Wakefield in the gym, the new school Wakefield, my brother was taking photos at the time, and he's got this picture of Adam throwing the first jump ball up, and the guys are jumping ball. And I took that picture and got it framed, and I gave it to Adam and wrote on the picture and said, thanks for being a part of the first game ever at Wakefield. He probably said some kind of smart comment. He don't even know where the picture is to this day, probably. But Adam has been a good referee, fair. And I know when you say, because the one thing you don't ever want to say to a referee is that you cheated. No referee goes out and cheats or anything like that. But I think Adam is an official that you can talk to. And I think that's all as coaches that we want is to be able to talk. There's been several times when there's a blown call, and I always wait 1 or 2 plays later, free throw going on, and that referee now standing near me. I can say, hey, man, 2 plays ago, what you think? And he's like, Coach, I missed it. And I'm good. I can move on. But when you have the officials that, they put on those stripes, it's like almost like a police officer. When you put on the badge, you can't tell them anything. Some officials will put those stripes on, and it's like they're bulletproof. And at the end of the day, I learned a long time ago, an official is just like, I'm a man, just like you're a man. And you want to be talked to. You're going to miss things. I'm going to miss things. But when you talk to somebody, it's really good. And Adam is one of those guys that you can talk to, and he'll explain it to you, whether he missed it or whether he got it right. So when your question at the beginning was, who do I choose? You don't say who you choose, because one year in the state tournament game, I look up and there's my boy, Adam. I'm like, oh, my man, Adam is in the state game with us. We good. And Adam blew a charge call. I hope you watching, Adam. Blew a charge call in the state game. But I'm going to tell you this real quick, Julie, because I think when you get to that state level with the officials, and I don't know how they do it, how you get selected, but I don't think an official from Northern Virginia should ref in a game that has a Northern Virginia team. Right. Here's why. Because we all have relationships. And Adam is doing that game with 2 other officials that he don't know. So what's Adam's mind thinking? oh, I can't call that call for Wakefield because they're going to think I'm giving Northern Virginia a call. But if I don't call that call, so he's in a tough situation as well, too. So I don't think any official should be, I think all officials should be graded and judged and get that state call, but do 3A, 4A, 5A. You shouldn't do Northern Virginia because it's tough on everybody. And not to say that a referee would make that call but that's tough on everybody. So I wouldn't want to be in Adam's shoes in that situation. And we talked about that, and it's over with. It's under. But there's officials like Jeff, my man Jeff, that represents the University of Miami. If it has not been a day that I don't see Jeff without a University of Miami stuff on, he's one of the better referees out there. Gil is my guy. Gil is, let me tell you right now, you can laugh and joke with Gil, but Gil takes his job serious. He takes it serious. And a lot of referees take their job serious. You know, I mean, Coach Willis is the funniest guy ever on the bench. And I remember one year, Gil came over and made a call. And when he said the numbers, he was like, foul on number 50. And, you know, I don't know if you ever seen the movie with Mike Epps. He was like, 50. And so Buck was like, 50 or 50. So they went back and forth. That's how we got, you know, Gil to get a smile on his face for the first time. You know, so we've been good. But I don't think any referee is out trying to, you know, call a bad game. You know, referees are just like us. We're trying to coach the best game. They're trying to get it right. But I would almost rather have officials, because I did learn early in my career when I got to the state level for the first time, I couldn't talk to the officials the way I talked to the Northern Virginia officials. And when I mean talk to them, it's like come over to the side, say, hey, did you miss the state? When we got to the state games, they didn't want to hear nothing. And you didn't know them, so you didn't have that relationship with them. So I couldn't be like, hey, Adam, you know, because I didn't know those guys and they didn't want to hear anything. So I think you keep it neutral. But I think, too, we've lost without our union that we used to have. We used to have meetings where the referees would come out and would talk to the coaches before.
That's right.
We have a beer together, because at the end of the day, you realize that that's a man over there just like you are. So we don't have that anymore. So it's a bunch of fussing and stuff going on. I think we should get back to the referees, the Cardinal Association, whoever we deal with, meet up with all the coaches and talk and find out about each other. It just helps out when you're doing these games that we're all men at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this has been great. I went way over the allotted time, but it's been great talking to you. Look, you've really done the community proud. You're a homegrown talent. Done a great job. I have a feeling one day you're going to get that undefeated team and you're going to win that state title. But you've helped so many kids. I think you're building a tremendous legacy, and just a great coach. I think kids are very lucky to play for you. It's great. It's great to have African role models like yourself and Doug to do what you do. So I love what you do from far away. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I think your media work is tremendous as well. Yeah. I mean, in that movie, and that director has actually done some good things since he was kind of new, and I think you have a career in that as well. So.
Let me feel you. I know we got to go, but the kid Cutter was a student. He played for WNL, so he was on So I was the JV coach, and Buck was the freshman coach, and Bobby was the varsity coach for all of those years, and that's why we had that success we had. We didn't have any turnover with the coaches. We did what we did. So Cutter was a kid who played on the freshman team with Buck. And then he skipped me and went right to varsity. So he was on that 05 team at WNL. So he was trying to get into all the video recording and stuff. And so he came to me after we beat them in the district quarterfinals or whatever. And he said, Coach Bentley, can I do a documentary on this team? Because I know you guys are going to do great things. You might win the state championship. Lord and behold, I didn't know what he wanted. I said, well, what do you want? He says, just access to the locker room and just to be able to follow you guys and just record. And I was like, okay, great. Well, he started that right after our district championship game. The first game we had was against South Lakes here at Wakefield. There were 700 people that couldn't get in because it was packed, and Cutter was one of them. So the video would have started that game against South Lakes, and that game was unbelievable. They had Ryan Scott, Julian Vaughn, loaded. Now again, third year coach, I'm coaching against Wendell Byrd, who has been my idol forever. And all of a sudden, I find myself in a regional game against the great Wendell Byrd. My God. I mean, emotions up and down. We end up winning it. But anyway, Cutter was a guy who does this video. I hope everybody gets a chance to watch it. He did that video with one camera and a bunch of edits that he did. He went on from there to make videos. He worked with U2, with Bono, and he's done movies. He's done everything. He actually had to drop out of college because he was getting so many requesting demands because of Remember the Warriors. We set up and he sold over 300 to 500 copies of those DVDs.
It did?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, and that's what propelled him. He went off to school in Boston at film school somewhere and had to leave after a semester because it started growing. And as you see what he's doing now, if you check his website out, he's rolling. And he's a local guy. Went to WNL, played basketball, and just wanted to do that video because he thought he had something special. We didn't know. And we never paid attention. He was so good. I didn't even see him. Like, if you watching the timeouts, I didn't know what cut it was. I didn't see this to the final cut, and he brought it into my office and showed me a piece of it. And I immediately started crying. I didn't even get through the whole video. I immediately started crying because I didn't know what he was doing. You know, people put together tapes and highlight tape. That's what I thought he was trying to do. And he put together a documentary. And if this was, you know, back in 2019, 18, this could have been on ESPN somewhere because of how good it was and what he did to highlight Wakefield basketball. It was great. It was great.
It was great. I mean, the filmography was great. And I think, you know, the story was great. But especially for guys like me, I mean, I've watched Hoosiers and Hoop Dreams a million times. I love a state title run. I mean, I love the whole thing, the whole dream. Everyone's in the gym. No matter what their problems are in the world or in the gym, all that matters is getting to the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. And I love that whole thing. So I can watch that. So I put it on yesterday. I was going to watch about 15 minutes just so I have some questions to ask that were a little different. And I watched the whole thing. I was really impressed. And then I went and I checked out his profile on Wikipedia to see what he's up to. And he won an award at one of the big film festivals.
Sundance.
Yeah, he won an award at Sundance is no joke. So
you
know, you did a great job. So hopefully my share will get it some more. You might not need you might not need our help anymore.
Right.
But,
anything is good. Anything is good.
Yeah.
But Julian, I want to take this time to thank you because, you know, growing up, man, as kids, we all would love to see our name, you know, on the back of our jersey or to be remembered. And for what you're doing for this is like, I'm not a basketball guy. I don't even know if I made second team all conference when I played. I played hard. And it transitioned because most guys who aren't the superstars become pretty good coaches, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't a superstar. I played hard in every sport that I played. But to have what you're doing on Facebook is amazing because I'm still learning. And I go back and I see some of the things you did and post that people post. What I take from your thing is still what I took from when I got the job at Wakefield is that it's bigger than me. This Northern Virginia basketball, what you're doing is letting everybody put their stuff up. It's so much bigger than 05. Then, you know, what? It's so many of those great teams and players that these kids don't even know about that I think it's time that you put this together and you can see those teams from TC Williams, those teams from West Potomac. Like I talk to Coach Ingalls all the time, who's at South County now. People don't even know that that's Bill Ingalls, who was one of the best coaches at West Potomac that's sitting on the bench at South County. Like, it's crazy. Like, they don't know their history, man. So I'm glad you're doing this because it's phenomenal.
Well, you know, I've had a lot of help from folks who helped me start it, and also all you coaches like yourself that are part of the history that participate. Yeah. So it's been a team effort, but I love it. And you know, I think we should elevate our game because it's part of our collective heritage, our culture, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I just enjoy. I love reliving the games. I love the people. I'm intrigued by people like yourself that are very talented people that spend their lives. And you talked about Veldran in this manner with the game because we love the game, but also with the kids. And it's just what you guys do is great. What I do, I'm just celebrating what you guys do. And but I appreciate that the acknowledgement. And awesome. I hopefully we can keep working together and do some more of these, do some panels and get Dermy on there. And
definitely gotta have him.
But no, I appreciate your time and all the things that you do for all the kids. So
thank you. Appreciate it. So hopefully we can keep this going. And I will say that it's kind of hard to post things on there because you know, this generation, man, you post, oh, look at Bentley posting all the Wakefield stuff, but you want to put it out there. But I tell you what, those TC Williams guys, man, they post everything, man. Those dudes are proud tradition of TC.
So you've been talking to Coach Ewell. That's all he talked about. If all inside the Beltway, what about outside the Beltway? They play basketball outside the Beltway. Well, there's South Lakes, but nothing else.
You're right. So, it's proud traditions, man. Proud traditions.
It is, man. Well, look, Coach, I appreciate you, man. And,
thank you, Julian.
Keep doing, and I'll definitely come check out your games this year as well.
Don't come this year. Come in 2 years.
I'll come. Okay, I'll come as soon as you invite me.
All right, I got you.
Okay, Coach.
Take care, Julian. Thank you.
Great talking to you, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Take care.